There is a sentence you said this week. You won't remember it. It cost you nothing, took less than 4 seconds, and you've already forgotten the shape of it. But the person across the table didn't forget. They carried it home. They turned it over in the car. And something between you and them moved, just slightly, in a direction you never chose. I came across a line once that I haven't been able to shake. Someone said, "It's not even the cursing. It's the people whose every story is somehow about somebody else." I read that, and I sat with it a long time, because I knew exactly who they meant. And then, slower, I wondered if they could have meant me. Here is what no one tells you about getting older. Your reputation is not built on your big speeches. It's built on the small things you say without thinking. The throwaway lines at dinner, the comment in the hallway. Those are the words that outlive you, and almost no one ever hears their own. We like to imagine that character shows up in the dramatic moments, the crisis, the funeral, the hospital waiting room. But character lives somewhere quieter than that. It lives in the ordinary Tuesday. It lives in how you answer the grandchild who asks a silly question, in what you say to the young cashier who's moving too slow. That's where the real you leaks out. So this is not a video about being a bad person. I want to be clear about that before we go 1 inch further. You never woke up one morning and decided to become harder or smaller or more bitter. Nobody does. What happened is gentler and far more dangerous than a decision. Think of someone who's done the same job for 30 years. They know the fastest way, the right way, their way. They don't mean to bark orders, but the years taught them to expect things. And to a stranger meeting them for the first time, all that hard-earned certainty just looks like arrogance. The experience that built you can curdle without your permission. That's the trap of a long life. Shakespeare understood it 400 years ago. King Lear was not a cruel man. He was an old king who had given everything, ruled for decades, and simply could not imagine being told no. So when his honest daughter wouldn't flatter him, he snapped, "Nothing will come of nothing." And that single, proud refusal to listen set the whole tragedy in motion. He lost everything, not to a villain, but to his own ungoverned tongue. Let's start. Because here's the promise I'm making you for the next 20 minutes. By the time we're done, you will catch yourself the next time one of these 5 sentences rises in your throat. And 10 years from now, when you're surrounded by people who still want you near, I think you'll look back on the afternoon you watched this and quietly say, "I'm so glad I stopped saying that." The first one doesn't sound dangerous at all. It sounds like wisdom. It sounds like the calm of someone who's seen a lot and isn't going to panic over every little thing. 3 soft words. It'll be fine. But under that calm, sometimes, is a door quietly closing. I think of a man in Cleveland. I'll call him Walter. The knees started bothering him at 62. It'll be fine. The forgetfulness crept in at 66. It'll be fine. Everybody forgets names. The distance with his daughter widened year after year. It'll be fine, she's just busy. Each time the phrase wasn't peace. It was a way of not looking. There's a pattern I've watched play out in 100 lives. The problem appears early. It almost always appears early. And the mind says, "It'll get better when things calm down." Then the calm comes, and it hasn't gotten better. So the mind says, "It'll get better when I retire." Then retirement comes. "It'll get better when the grandkids are older." It never says, "It got better." It only ever says, "Next." Here's a test you can run tonight. Listen for the word when. I'll deal with it when. If you find yourself stacking those, one on top of another, you're not being patient. You're being postponed. And the years don't wait for you to feel ready. The cruelty of "it'll be fine" is that it feels generous in the moment and turns expensive only later. A small repair becomes a collapse. A drifting relationship becomes a stranger at your funeral. Saying it once is human. Saying it as a way of life is how a person sleeps through their own story. So I'm not asking you to become anxious. I'm asking you to swap one word. Instead of, it'll be fine, try, what would I do if it isn't? That single question doesn't steal your peace. It earns it. Peace built on looking is solid. Peace built on looking away is just a delay with a kind voice. The second one is louder. We've all been near it. The person for whom nothing is ever quite right. The coffee, the weather, the doctor, the government, the neighbor's dog. Each complaint on its own is fair enough. It's the bottomless quality of it that wears a room down to the studs. A study published in 2025 looked at older adults and something researchers call repetitive negative thinking, the mind running the same grievance on a loop. They found it wasn't harmless venting. It was linked to measurable decline in cognitive function over time. The complaint doesn't just tire the people around you. It carves a groove in your own brain and your own mood. And here's the number underneath the noise. AARP's 2025 national study, surveying 3,276 adults 45 and older, found that 40% now report being lonely, up from 35% a decade ago. The lonely, on average, spend 7.3 hours of every day alone against 5.6 for everyone else. Think about that gap. An extra hour and a half every single day with no one to absorb the complaints but yourself. I picture a kitchen in Phoenix at 4 in the afternoon, the lights gone gold across the counter. A woman is on the phone with her sister, and for 40 straight minutes the conversation has been a tour of everything that's gone wrong. Her sister loves her. Her sister will always pick up. But her sister is also, quietly, starting to let it ring one extra time before she answers. Friendship is a campfire, not a furnace. It gives warmth, but it needs tending, and it can be put out. Every fair complaint is a small cup of cold water. One cup, the fire shrugs off. But a person who arrives with nothing but cups of cold water, day after day, eventually finds themselves sitting alone in the dark, honestly puzzled about where everyone went. I'm not telling you to swallow your troubles. Real troubles deserve a voice. The line is repetition. Saying it once is honesty. Saying it for the 40th time is a faucet you've forgotten to turn off. And people don't leave faucets. They just stop coming into the room. So, before we go to the third one, I want you to do something for me. Tell me, how old are you right now, and which of these first two did you catch yourself saying this week? Just one word in the comments, the complaint, or the it'll be fine. One word. Other people scrolling down here are reading what you write, and you'd be amazed how much it helps a stranger to see they're not the only one. The third thing, the brag that lands on a bruise. The third thing is the most socially invisible, because the person doing it believes they're spreading joy. They're talking about their grandson at Stanford, their daughter's new house in Charlotte, the cruise, the portfolio, the boy who made partner. And every word is true. That's what makes it so hard to name. But pride, spoken aloud in the wrong room, always lands somewhere, and you rarely know where. Across the table in Madison sits a man whose own son hasn't called in 2 years. Beside him, a woman who buried her husband in spring and can't afford the cruise, the house, or the hope. Your good news is a gift only if the room can hold it. Otherwise, it's a weight you've handed to someone already carrying too much. I read a whole thread once of grown children describing the same quiet ache. One wrote that their mother could turn any conversation about anyone into a status report on her own family's victories. Another said it plainly. Every gathering felt like a scoreboard, and they always seemed to be losing. These weren't bitter people. They were tired people, worn down by a love that had curdled into competition. Here's the part that stings to say out loud. Very often, the loudest bragging comes from the emptiest cup. When someone has something solid of their own, a real interest, a project, a curiosity, a life still in motion, they don't need to borrow their child's resume to feel like somebody. The brag is frequently a confession. I stopped growing, so let me show you what grew without me. Stop for 1 second and be honest with yourself. Somewhere this month, did you reach for your kid's accomplishment, or your bank balance, or your house, to feel like you mattered in a room? If a small flush of recognition just went through you, good. That's not guilt. That's the door opening. Here's the rule I'd put on the wall. If you want to share good news, let it be your news. Something you are doing, however small. A book you're reading. A garden in St. Louis you're nursing back. Borrowed glory always asks the room to clap for someone who isn't there. Your own quiet life shared gently never costs anyone a thing. The fourth one is the heaviest. It's the cutting word. The cruelty, the contempt, the casual cruelty dressed up as honesty. And I want to slow down here, because most people misunderstand where the real damage lives. It isn't the loud curse word. It's something colder and more habitual than that. Remember that line I read at the very start? The people whose every story is about somebody else. That's the cutting word in its everyday clothes. Not screaming, just a steady low diet of who's failing, who's foolish, who's beneath us. A person can go a whole year without raising their voice and still poison every room they enter. There's an old piece of wisdom. Confucius taught it to his students 25 centuries ago. He said, "With a friend, you may offer honest counsel once. Try a second time, and a third, and you don't fix them. You only make them resent you, and you push the friendship away with your own hands." The cutting word feels like truth-telling. It's usually just the sound of a bridge being burned. Here's something worth sitting with. The way a person speaks when they're hurt or threatened, that's not a mood. That's the final shape of everything they practiced. If contempt is what comes out under pressure, it's because contempt is what got used the most. The good news hidden in that is enormous, and I'll get to it. But first, sit with the weight of it. Why do we cut the ones closest to us the deepest? Because we know exactly where they're soft. The grandson who's struggling, the weight someone's ashamed of, the marriage that didn't last. We know, and in a bad moment, we aim. A stranger, we'd fumble. The people we love, we hit dead center because love handed us the map. And the children are watching. Not the words exactly, the method. A boy in Tampa learns how a man handles being disrespected by watching his grandfather do it at the dinner table. He learns whether the answer is a cruel word or a steady one. We don't teach the next generation with our advice. We teach them with our reflexes. So here is the whole of it, the heaviest sentence I'll say today. Your words are not just sounds. They are the visible edge of who you became. A philosopher once wrote that language is the house a person lives in. Stand in your house for a moment. Look at what you've been building, one ordinary sentence at a time. Is it a place anyone wants to come and sit? Which brings us finally to the fifth thing, and it's the one I'd beg you to strike from your vocabulary tonight because it's the quietest and the most total. 4 words. It's too late for me, for my health, for my friendships, for becoming a softer, better version of who I am. I understand why it's said. By a certain age, you've watched some doors close for real. The body keeps a tally. The years feel less like an open field and more like a hallway getting narrower. So the mind makes a kind of peace with surrender and calls it realism. But it isn't realism. It's the most expensive sentence a person can say. Now hear me, because this is the turn the whole video has been walking toward. We are living in a way no humans before us ever have. People are not just reaching 80, they're reaching 90, 100, and going strong past it. If you are 65 right now, you are very likely not in the last chapter. You may be standing at the start of a decade or 2 or 3. That is not a hallway. That's a horizon. And here's the thing about words that no closing door can take from you. A kind word is a choice. A cruel one is a choice. You can have spent 40 years reaching for the cutting word because it's the only tool anyone ever handed you, and you can still, tonight, at any age, reach for a different one. Say the gentle thing, and you become, in that instant, a gentler person. Say the wise thing, and you are wiser. It was never about your past. It is always only about the very next sentence out of your mouth. Think about what that means across 20 more years. 20 years of choosing the warmer word over the colder one, of asking, "How are you, really?" instead of reporting your grandson's salary, of saying, "I was wrong," instead of "you always." A person who makes that turn doesn't just improve their manners. They rebuild who they are, sentence by sentence, with all the time they have left. And they have so much more of it than they think. A woman in Asheville told me once, she was 71, that she'd spent her whole life as what she called a hard woman. Sharp tongue, quick to judge, proud of it. And then somewhere in her late 60s, she got tired of how empty her phone had gotten. She didn't change her past, she just changed her next word, and her next one. 2 years on, she said her kitchen was full again. It's never the years that were too late, it's only ever the sentence we refuse to try. So let's gather these up. It'll be fine, the sentence that postpones your life. The complaint with no bottom, that puts out the fire it's warming by. The brag that lands on a bruise. The cutting word, the house you live in. And it's too late, the surrender disguised as wisdom. 5 small sentences, each one a fork in the road you take a dozen times a day without noticing. Before I close with the one thing I want you to carry out of here tonight, something quiet has changed on this channel. There is now a way to walk alongside this work, if you've ever felt moved to. It's called Friend of WISECAST, $4.99 a month. A small badge beside your name, and episodes a day before everyone else. Nothing more is asked of you. If you don't, the work continues exactly the same. Either way, thank you for being here. Henry David Thoreau, sitting alone by a pond, once wrote that he never found a companion so companionable as solitude. People misread that as a man who didn't need anyone. It was the opposite. He understood that the quality of your solitude and the quality of your company both come down to the same thing. What you carry in your mouth and your mind when you're with another person. Someone put it more plainly than I ever could. The moment you stop counting what you have, happiness quietly leaves the room. So count it, out loud, if you can. The next word you say is the smallest, freest choice you have left. And it is the one that will outlive you. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you truly for sitting with me.